I've been an entrepreneur since 2017. Or I mean, entrepreneur's a bit of a loose word for all the way back then. I've been self-employed. I quit my job and started saying yes to anything and everything someone would pay me for freelance using my creative skill, which at the time was photo and video. And I've been doing that for 8 years now. And for most of that time, I spent it wanting to be achieving more than I was, or feeling like I was owed more than what I was making in that moment. I always felt like I was being shorthanded, like I was being purposefully held back, or a higher power was stopping me from achieving or making the money that I wanted to be making. What's crazy is out of those entire 8 years, it's only been the last 2.5 years where my business is actually made considerable amounts of money, but also in a way that's cohesive with the mission that I feel like I was on. For a lot of those years, I felt like I was just riding by the seat of my pants, doing whatever I could be paid for in whatever way, making a little bit of money and then draining it back to zero, making a little bit of money and draining it back to zero. I've only really gained some momentum and gotten out ahead of myself in the last 2.5 years. And it's only been the last 12 months when my business has made more than $1 million in a 12-month period. And only now at 27 years old where I've personally passed, for what this phrase is worth, but millionaire status. And I'm now looking back, able to piece together the missing ingredients and mistakes that I made that were stopping me from being able to achieve what I wanted to achieve. And so in today's video, I'm going to share with you some of those lessons that have enabled me at 27 years old to become a millionaire. But first, I want to share a little backstory because there's probably a whole group of you right now who are new to this channel. This is the first time you're ever seeing my face and you're sitting there wondering, who the fuck is this guy and why should I listen to him? And then there's probably another group of you who've seen me before and you're sitting there wondering, hold on, Tom usually speaks about creativity and content creation and personal branding. Why the fuck is he talking about money? So I wanted to share some of my backstory, some of my relationship with money, so it hopefully gives you the context through which you can see the rest of this video. So I've been terrible with money for a lot of my adult life, not in the sense that I would spend too much of it. I've never been the kind of person that spends beyond their means, but because I would put my blinders on to acknowledging it even being a thing. In the early days, I was terrified of speaking to an accountant because it meant revealing all and showing that I wasn't a very good entrepreneur, because I would make a little bit of money and then spend it all and then make more money and spend it all. And so I didn't want to bother speaking to an accountant. I didn't want to show the skeletons in my closet, if you will. And then as a result, I didn't want to speak to a financial advisor or someone that could help me because I didn't want to acknowledge that it was a problem that I had. All round, I was terrified of learning about money, even watching other people's YouTube videos. I remember back in the day, I would go and spend little periods of time trying to learn about money, trying to learn about personal finance, trying to learn about taxes, trying to learn about all these situations. And it would leave me with this pit in my stomach. It made me feel like a loser. Going and acknowledging that I needed to learn and then comparing where I was to where these people that were teaching me were made me feel like a fucking loser. And so I stopped trying altogether. For a lot of those early years, I just completely ignored the situation. I hoped that if I just pushed it to the wayside and I focused on running my business, that problem would eventually solve itself. I wouldn't have to worry about solving my tax problem because I could just ignore the problem, make enough money that I wouldn't have to worry about paying my taxes, or I could just make enough money that I wouldn't have to worry about investing, or I could just make enough money that the problems would go away. And so I didn't come out of the box like this. I didn't have this knack for personal finance. In fact, I had the opposite. I hated financial maths. I hated economics. I was really bad at maths at school, but it wasn't until I started to acknowledge that the only reason I was bad is because I was ignoring the problem altogether. I was putting my blinders on to the things that I needed to acknowledge that I finally started to change. And so I hope that through this video, it may have a similar effect for some of you. Lesson number 1 is you make what you're ready for. You cannot surpass the level that you're playing at. And so whatever amount of money that you're making right now is exactly the amount of money you should be making for the level that you're playing at. So acknowledging that you're exactly where you're supposed to be and the amount of money you're making is exactly what you're supposed to be making for the level you're playing should give you the confidence to invest in learning the skills that will make you capable of solving the kind of problems that can make you the amount of money you want to be making. You can't cheat the system. And if you do cheat the system, it's not going to last for very long. Back in the day when I was freelancing and feeling like I was getting short-handed and feeling like I should be making more than I was making and trying to increase my prices, but just getting told no over and over and over again until I had to reduce them again, Going through that situation with the mindset that I'm owed more than what I was making in that moment only held me back from improving the thing that was actually going to help me make more money. But if I could go back to that person, if I could go back to myself when I was 21, 22, 23 and tell him that he's exactly where he's supposed to be, even though it would hurt to hear that in the moment, I wish I could go back to him and tell him that he's exactly at the level that he's playing at. He is making exactly the amount of money he's supposed to be making because he's making exactly what he's ready for. Hearing that then, even though it would have hurt, would have helped him acknowledge that problem and then start working towards a solution, start learning the things that need to be learned in order to make the money that he wanted to make. There are so many people, and myself included, I'm mostly just referencing my younger self, but I never acknowledged that it was a problem that I could solve because I thought I was being short-handed. I thought the amount of money I was making was less than what I was owed, and that gave me the opposite of a growth mindset. It made me entitled. It made me feel like I could keep doing exactly what I was doing in that moment and start achieving outlier results and change nothing about what I was doing. And it was only once I started to really acknowledge both that I had a problem, obviously, with my inability or my financial illiteracy, and also acknowledge that I was not yet the kind of entrepreneur that was capable of making the money that I wanted. And if you had given me the results I have now back then, I wouldn't have held on to them. All of the skills, all of the knowledge I have, everything I'm capable of withstanding, the stress I'm capable of withstanding today, the abundance I'm capable of withstanding today, the responsibility I'm capable of withstanding today have only come as a result of the actions I've taken to get here. And so if you had given my younger self, my 22, 23, 24-year-old self, the results I have today, he would have squandered it. He would have fucked it up. He would have let it go. He would have lost it all because he wasn't yet ready to handle the results that I have now. And so as difficult as it can be to really acknowledge that you're not ready yet, or you are the main reason that you haven't achieved what you want to achieve, it should give you the confidence to know that you're playing the right game. You just haven't played it enough yet. And so even me now, even though I've achieved what I only dreamt of achieving a few years ago, my goals have only gotten bigger. I want to make more money than I am right now. I have massive goals for where I want my business to go. But because I've learned that lesson, I now acknowledge that there is something in me that is not yet ready to have the results I want in the future. And that's a lot better than where I was before when I was entitled and felt like I was owed the results that I wanted. Lesson number 2 is you cannot save time, you can only spend it. So what are you doing each week that is spending the time you are given? If you think about your time, the time that you have each day, each week, each month, each year, if you think about that time like it's a dollar amount that you're spending, it should help you start to be a little bit more strict with where you place that time. One of the biggest changes I've made in the last 2 years that has created the results that I have is I've been much more intentional with where I spend my time. Usually, the things that you want to achieve are not going to be a result of doing more. They're going to be a result of doing less of the things that aren't achieving that thing. And so being really honest with yourself about how you are spending your time, because you are spending your time, how you are spending that time, and is that moving you towards the results you want? Are the things that you're doing each day moving you closer to what you want to achieve in terms of a target hourly rate per unit of time that you input? Are you moving closer to what you want to achieve or further away? And so if you want to make $1 million a year with your business and you're working 5 days a week, you're working 38 hours a week, which is the average amount that a human being works per week, you need to be making at least $550 per hour that you work. And if you're doing anything that outputs less than $550 per hour that you work, it is moving you in the wrong direction. And this argument is not just about outsourcing. It's not just about delegating, although some of those things can absolutely help. You know, if you can hire someone to do the thing for less than $550, if you're working at the level of $1 million, then you should absolutely go do that. But it's more about saying no to the things that you don't necessarily need to be doing. I've probably said no to more things in the last 2.5 years that have created the business I have now than I've said yes to things. I say no to more opportunities. I say no to more people. I answer the phone less. I go on more meetings less. I do things less now because I know that I need to withhold that hourly rate. And obviously this is a slippery slope. I think one of the things that I've had to learn in the last 2 years is that you can't always prioritize making money per unit of time you spend. Sometimes you're going to have to spend some of that time on things that are going to make you feel good so you can then work in the hours that you work. Things like my triathlon training do not pay me $550 an hour. Me sitting on the bike for 2 hours on a Wednesday does not make me $1,100. But I've acknowledged that by spending that time, I feel better, and as a result, I'm more effective. And if I'm more effective, I'm making more per unit of time I spend on the things that I spend it on. And so audit your time. Really sit back and think, am I spending the time in a way that aligns with my goals? Is this moving me towards my goal, or is this distracting me or pulling me away from what I could be achieving? And if it is, it might be time to either get rid of those things or outsource them altogether. Lesson number 3 is if you have skeletons in your closet, you will run from money. Whether subconsciously or consciously, if there are things that you're hiding from the world, you will stifle your own success. A good example of this is my first few years in business. Because I felt like I was a bit of a fraud when it came to running my business. I would, make a little bit of money and then drain my bank account to zero, and then make a bit of money and then drain my bank account to zero. And because I was trying to grow my social media, which wasn't paying me, but then I was also trying to do freelance stuff, I didn't feel like I was a real entrepreneur. And as a result, I was hiding from going and seeing an accountant, someone that could have helped me in that situation, because I didn't want to reveal all to that person. That's a really literal example. I was literally scared of showing my books to someone who would have to see my books. But on an esoteric sense, if you have skeletons in your closet, if you have things you are hiding from the world, whether subconsciously or consciously, you will hide from success. And the reason for that is all of the actions, all of the big actions that create the most success, especially for us that do this front-facing kind of business, creating content, building an audience, releasing products, selling, all of those things shine a spotlight on you. And if there's something that you're scared of revealing to the world, you will subconsciously limit your ability to become successful. If there's a creator who's lying about the amount of money that they may subconsciously be worried about growing their audience too big, because that will open themselves up to deeper criticism and potentially revealing the fact that they're not as successful as they want to. And so they will subconsciously limit their ability to be successful. If there's something in your past that you're embarrassed about, or you're worried about the world knowing, you won't be as much of yourself on camera because you'll be worried about that reality coming to light. And then your results won't be as good because you're not bringing as much of yourself out when you make content. And so acknowledging that if you have anything that you need to work on personally, it may be the biggest thing that is holding you back from achieving the success that you want. For me, this was massive. In the first few years of running my business, I was not in a place emotionally where I was capable of achieving the things that I wanted to achieve. I was deeply unhappy. I would honestly argue depressed, and I was working through a lot of pain. I always felt like I was using that discomfort, using that pain, using the anger that I had in me as the motivation to work. And although that got me enough to not have to have a job, it held me back from achieving far beyond. And it wasn't until I acknowledged that was a problem and started to seek out help for it that, if you can believe it, things started to get better. As I got better, my ability to work got better, my ability to be myself got better, my ability to put my best foot forward in the best way possible got infinitely better. And if you can believe it, my results got better. And so if I can urge any of you, it's going to be the inner battle you fight first before you get to achieve what you want externally. And I know that can be a bitter pill to swallow, acknowledging the problems that you have and also acknowledging that you are the only thing holding you back from achieving what you want. But it may turn into the single greatest decision that you make. Lesson number 5, to round this all out nicely: what is measured is managed. I was terrified of money, plain and simple. For the first few years of running my business, and to be honest, from my earliest job, I was terrified of money. I used to ignore the problem altogether. I wouldn't open my bank account for weeks at a time. I would go to the supermarket and swipe my card whilst crossing my fingers, praying that there was money in the account. I would never ever measure my profit and loss for the month. I never tracked my expenses. I never tracked anything because I was terrified of the problem. I would prefer to ignore it altogether, like a burning building that I was trying to avoid, than acknowledge that I had a problem. And it wasn't until I embraced the discomfort of acknowledging that I had a problem and then walking towards that burning building that things started to get better. but not straight away. The first few videos that I watched trying to learn about financial independence, managing my profit, managing cash flow, doing my fucking taxes, going to an accountant for the first time. I remember I was sitting in the accounting firm, in the foyer of the accounting firm with some of the documents that I thought I needed to bring, and I was sweating. I felt so uncomfortable with the reality that someone was about to look into my entire business. All my fuck ups, all the problems I had, all the issues I was avoiding. I was sweating sitting there, acknowledging that I was about to share all. Even watching some of the early videos, watching other people younger than me achieving way more than me made me feel like a fucking loser. But embracing that, leaning into that discomfort and slowly over time getting better has turned into the greatest decision I've ever made. To the point now where the first thing I do every single day is track my daily cash flow. The first thing I do every single morning is check all my investments, check all my cash flows across all my bank accounts for my business and my personal and my fiance's joint accounts. I am obsessed with it now. I've become deeply passionate about personal finance. Making this video, I am deeply passionate about this topic, but that only happened over the last 6 years of slowly starting to learn about money. And so what is measured is managed. If you are like me in a position like I was 6 years ago, where you're avoiding the problem altogether, I promise embracing it will be better. I know it feels easy right now to just ignore it and imagine it's not there and swipe your card and pray that there's money in the account and just focus entirely on your business. But if you can acknowledge that problem, it'll make making money so much easier. Embrace the problem. Lean into it, track the things that you want to grow and they will grow. Like a garden that you have to water. If you just stay inside and ignore the garden altogether and hope that the rainfall waters it enough, nothing's going to live. But if you get out there every day and spend 15 minutes just watering the garden a little bit here and there, things will start to grow and things will start to thrive. And then eventually a lot of it will become self-sustaining. The same thing will happen with your money. I hope this video helps and I'll see you in the next one.